Hey, it's Deep Janda from Hockey Night in Canada, Punjabi. Welcome to the show. Welcome to our YouTube channel. And I have a very special guest. You've seen him on Hockey Night in Canada, Punjabi before. That's right, Calder Cup champion, former captain, pretty much wherever he played. But the folks in Kamloops remember him, especially AJ Baines. What's going on?
Not much, man. Great to see you as always.
Well, hey, it's great to always connect with you, but especially this time of the year, because yeah, I did mention Calder Cup champion, AHL champion, scored the game-winning goal. But you're watching the Stanley Cup playoffs right now, the Cup final. How are you finding the action? How are you finding the final?
It's been amazing. I still remember game one on the weekend there, and I mean game two was a little bit of a higher scoring game for one team for Vegas as opposed to Florida, a little more of a blowout. But I mean the physicality, the intensity, the stuff after the whistles. It's been. I mean these guys want both teams want to win so bad, and I mean the speed of the game and it's been there's everything in it. It's been awesome.
All right, before we get into a specific storyline that you're connected to with the series, when you watch, playoff hockey, do you miss it?
No, I mean in the sense that no way watching how hard those guys are going and the effort and energy and exercise they had to do what they're doing. I was like, no, there's no way. And they're playing at a speed that I can't even imagine. So
All
I'm
right.
enjoying it as a fan watching.
I love the honesty, and you put in your years anyway, so that's good. All right. The
Hey,
specific connection you have to the Cup final this year is the coach of the Vegas Golden Knights. Bruce Cassidy was your assistant coach over in Norfolk in 0405. Trent Yawney was the head coach there. But
yeah,
what kind of coach is Bruce Cassidy? We see him in the Cup final now, but you've had that firsthand look of what kind of coach he is.
yeah, he's awesome. It's a long time ago. It's almost 20 years ago. It doesn't feel that long ago. It was the lockout year in Norfolk, and Butch was he was with Washington. He was head coach there for a few years, and then came over that year. And man, we had a great team. We had a really, really good team. We lost to Philadelphia, who ended up winning the Calder Cup. But Bruce was great, fun guy to be around. Very intelligent. I'd probably say the smartest coach I've ever had tactically, and just knew the game, and it was great. I mean, yeah, Trent was our head coach, was awesome too. I had him for 5 years, and I only had Bruce for the 1 year because they both actually went up to Chicago the next year to be with the Blackhawks. But yeah, I know we talked. Go ahead. There's another story I actually wanted to tell you about Bruce if we have a
Okay.
minute. A
Hey,
fun
I'm here
side
for
of
all
him
your
too.
stories, AJ. You tell me about this. This is I've actually from a distance watched Bruce Cassidy, coach obviously in Boston earlier on, but this year and what he's been able to do in Vegas, to me, it's one of the more interesting storylines and characters in this playoff. So please hit me with your story.
No, 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 like what you said there is awesome. I mean, I'm really cheering for him, and I kind of have been for the whole playoffs. Along with Yohani in LA, I was hoping they both would meet, but when LA went out, I jumped on Vegas's wagon. I couldn't believe how. I mean, he had a lot of success in Boston, and then to see Boston kind of. I know we talked earlier, doing what they're doing and breaking the records. I felt for Butch, and to see him kind of on the cusp now that would be so cool to see him win it and kind of I don't know, vindicates the word, but last laugh maybe. We'll see what happens, eh?
Yeah, there was plenty of noise coming out of Boston when he was immediately, fired. So there's a lot of chatter. And I know
Right.
the 32 Thoughts podcast with Jeff Merrick and Elliot Friedman, he did talk about saying, yeah, I wasn't exactly happy with some of that noise coming out of Boston. It's only
Right.
human. Everybody feels that way when
Right.
you hear stories and opinions coming out about you. But you mentioned one thing a couple of minutes ago about probably the best coach you've had from a strategic point of view, or maybe the X's and O's aspect. Can you elaborate on that? What makes Bruce Cassidy such a good coach?
I think his feel for the game is his game sense. He's very very keen with his eyes on you know on what each type of player is, opposing players. But I remember our power play was awesome that year, and him and Trent had some real cool stuff. They designed some set plays. Rennie Bork, if you remember him,
Of
he was
course.
a rookie in the league. He won the Rookie of the Year, and man, he on the power play they had him a special play designed, and I don't know how many goals he scored on it, but no matter where we were or who we were up against, they found ways to put it in. But yeah, I remember that specific part of our power play was lethal.
One of the other things that I think we see with this Vegas team when it comes to Bruce Cassidy is, and this is not to discredit a previous coach, whether it's Gerard Gallant or Pete DeBoer, but there seems to be up and down that lineup. They have depth, which is a great job by George McPhee and McCrimmon. But beyond that, you have star power. You have to have accountability as well. You have to make sure that every player is doing their part. Is that a big part of Cassidy? Do you have any stories about Bruce Cassidy and the accountability aspect?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's that team had to be accountable. When we played during the lockout year, both him and Trent really demanded that from us. And I remember one game on the power play, I actually had a pretty good period. I think I got an assist, almost had a second one, but a couple times I lost the puck in the other team's zone. Puck went down the ice. So intermission, the power play met in the power play room, and Butchie would have the board up against the room. And before the meeting starts, this is right before he's going to drive. He's like, Bainesy, how come whenever you're out, every time you're out on the ice, the puck's in our end? Like call me out right before the meeting. And I was like, you're a little, don't say anything. You're just
And
listening,
you
but you're
thought you had
like
a
in
pretty
your,
good period.
yeah, I thought I had a
Okay.
pretty good period. And but he was right. I did lose a couple. Pucks there. When it gets shot down, 1 minute's killed off the clock, right? And so he goes in, and then we get back to the bench, started the bench, and I'm there at the bench. That was the meeting right before we went back out for the next period. So there I am. I'm kind of fired up, ready to go. And Butch comes down to the bench. I didn't turn back. I just had his arm on my back, and he comes into my ear and she goes, Bainesy, hey, don't think I didn't see your great plays out there too. Okay, if I'm hard on you, everyone else is gonna follow. And when you're young and you hear that, and you're like, okay, so there was a method. Him and Trent, there was a method to what they said and how they taught. And looking back, you're like, okay, there was a reason why he said that, right?
And watching this team in Vegas now, you could probably we don't hear those conversations like the players, but you can imagine a conversation between a Bruce Cassidy and a Mark Stone, right? Mark Stone plays the game a certain way. So if
Yeah.
there's that sort of coaching going on, he's probably lighting up Mark Stone in a very good way where it's saying, hey, Mark, you can be better because you're going to raise the standard of everybody else. So I could see that with the Bruce Cassidy coach team, and especially with this veteran leadership group. So you mentioned that he was the coach of the Washington Capitals. We saw what happened there. It wasn't the greatest first, introduction to NHL coaching. It was a tough one. He actually had to go back to the OHL and work his way back up. From a coaching perspective, and you worked on the skills and development side of things post-retirement as well. How big of a humbling experience and how big of a teaching lesson do you think that was for Bruce Cassidy?
Well, I think first and foremost, it says a lot about Bruce and what he did to it took him 10 years to get back to the NHL, and for a guy to show that kind of humility and want to go back, start back at the bottom after he'd worked his way up to the top. I mean, before he went to Washington, he was coaching in Grand Rapids. I played against him. He was coaching. So, I mean, it wasn't like he was just handed a job at that time either. He was in the AHL for a few years, came up, it didn't work out. And then to go all the way back, take another 10 years from the OHL and then the AHL again. I mean, it's pretty awesome and pretty cool to see, how he did with Boston. I mean, they had some great years there, and obviously now here to bring success there. I mean, for all the guys, I think guys that spent a lot of time in the minors and stuff, they can relate to that. And yeah, he's the easy guy to cheer for right now for me.
Well, we'll see what happens in the Cup final, but one thing's for sure, it's always great to have you on the show.
You
AJ
know,
Baines,
you
the
know what? If
captain.
you do,
Yeah.
if you do got one more minute, this is the one I want to. It's kind of
Okay.
a funny,
Hey, let's
a
not
funny
wrap up
side
yet.
to Bruce. Every year we would have a Super Bowl, NFL playoffs, a draft. So we'd kind of pair off. There'd be like 8 groups of guys, and we pick a number out of a hat. Whoever names came out, you get first pick of the the NFL playoffs on who you think's going to win the Super Bowl.
Okay.
And obviously, the guys who had the top 4 or 5 picks, you had to put in a certain amount of money to bid on that team. Okay.
Okay.
And me and Marty Wilford got first pick that year. We put him on it. I was a huge Steelers fan, and I thought this was their year. They finally, this is the year they're going to do it. Ben Roethlisberger was a rookie. Sure enough, second pick was Coach Yanni and Coach Cassidy. and they're like, Steelers aren't going anywhere. We're taking the Patriots. Sure enough, we all watched the AFC final together, and there's Butch just with a smiling grin on his face, like he knew they were going to do. He says, I told you," and they won it all. They won all the money, and I remember that.
All right, so he coached you and he schooled you when it came to the fantasy,
Exactly.
the football.
Exactly.
All right, awesome stories. And AJ, as always, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Calder Cup champion, captain at every single level, and Kamloops' finest, AJ Baines. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Anytime, man. Thanks,
All right,
Randy.
that was our conversation with AJ. And make sure to subscribe. Make sure to like. We'll see you next time.